You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hello, and thanks for joining Revolution 250. This is where we remember events that took place 250 years ago this week. It's a short bonus episode from the American Revolution podcast to remember these important anniversaries of the Revolutionary War. This week we remember the Continental debate over holding New York City, which took place in early August 1776. The British invasion of New York was not a surprise to anyone. General George Washington had expected that the British would move there after they abandoned Boston in March 1776. The British hoped to cut off New England from the rest of the colonies, then deal with the rebellious New Englanders from there. Now, when the British left Boston, they went to Halifax because they weren't ready to go to New York, but New York always was the goal for the Army. Washington had received word in early June that the British fleet transporting the British Army had left Halifax, headed for New York City. It wasn't until the end of June that the fleet arrived in New York Harbor, just off the coast of Sandy Hook, New Jersey. British General William Howe wasn't yet ready to engage in battle. He was awaiting an even larger fleet on its way from Britain, commanded by his brother, Admiral Richard Howe, and a third fleet bringing yet another army up from the southern colonies under the command of General Henry Clinton. Now, while he waited, General Howe took over the relatively rural Statin Island for his men to recover from the sea voyage. Admiral Howe's ships began to arrive in mid-July and dribbled in over the course of the next few weeks. During this time, the two armies could eye each other across New York Harbor, but generally kept to themselves. On July 31st, Clinton's fleet also arrived in New York Harbor. By the time it completely arrived in early August, the British force totaled over 400 ships of war, 32,000 soldiers, and 10,000 sailors. It was an overwhelming number, designed to shock and awe the colonists into submission. Admiral Howe had also received in his appointment as a peace commissioner. He began distributing proclamations to the colonists saying that if they swore allegiance to the king, they could receive pardons for any prior acts related to the rebellion. The expectation was that once the colonists saw the level of military might assembled against them, they would back down and accept their fate. Howe had even tried to set up a negotiation with General Washington directly. Washington refused even to receive any letters from Howe, arguing that they were not addressed to General Washington, but only to Mr. Washington. By this time, the U.S. had declared its independence, and unless Howe was willing to recognize Washington's military commission, there wasn't anything to talk about. This was just part of Washington's larger view that he had no authority nor any inclination to discuss any peace agreement that did not recognize American independence. General Nathaniel Greene had been assigned to command the defenses around New York City. On August 6th, Greene wrote to Washington advising the commander that the city was indefensible, given the size of the British force and their ability to control the waters around the island. Greene suggested that the Continentals burn New York City to deny it to the enemy, and then withdraw back to New Jersey or up into New York State. Washington, however, was determined to stay and fight. Even if they couldn't prevail, they would force the British to pay a price in taking the city. The British spent more weeks on Staten Island with no sign of when they would launch their attack or exactly where, but everyone knew it was coming. That attack finally came on Long Island, beginning on October 22nd, 1776. I hope you've enjoyed this Revolution 250 moment. For more context on this story, please check out episode 101 of the American Revolution podcast at blog.amrevpodcast.com. And please subscribe for free to the whole podcast on whatever platform you like. Thanks again for listening to this Revolution 250 moment on the American Revolution podcast.